الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Continuing on from where we left off, after mentioning the fatwa of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah and some of the fatwa of some of the ulama regarding the rulings of those who do not pay the zakat, and we spoke about the one that leaves that off out of believing it's not a pillar or it's not obliged, and we said the one that believes it is obliged but he does it out of laziness or stinginess, if you'd like to say for a better word, wallahu a'lam. Now we'll continue into the recipients of zakat, the beneficiaries. Who is allowed to receive zakat? Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah At-Tawbah has already outlined for us the beneficiaries of zakat. And we said that one of the differences between the zakat and the sadaqah is zakat is set to specific individuals. That is one of the definitions. When we took the three definitions at the beginning, we mentioned that in each definition, and the definition of zakat in general, is that it has to be given to certain people, certain individuals, or certain classes or types of individuals. So we see here, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. Indeed, the sadaqat, see now how we can understand inshallah that it means zakat, because we said in the Quran and in the Sunnah often the word sadaqah or sadaqat comes to mean zakat. He says indeed as-sadaqat are only for the fuqara, the poor, and al-masakin. Here they usually translate it as well as the poor, or you can say the poor and the needy. We're going to see exactly what Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said about each one of these categories after we just translate the verse. Indeed, as-sadaqat are only for the poor and the needy and those who are employed to collect the funds. The one that works in this and is employed to collect them, he's entitled. And to attract the hearts of those who have been inclined towards Islam and practicing and things like this, which is what we said when we spoke about giving it to a kafir. When we spoke about just recently giving it to a kafir, that's included. Because we said generally speaking, you're not allowed to give zakat to a kafir, correct? But we said some of the ulama were on the opinion that the correct opinion is, in this case, you can. Or for example, to prevent his evil and things like this. That Allah Azza wa Jal said, and to free the captives, and for those in debt, and for Allah's cause. Allah's cause generally meaning jihad. But inshallah we're going to see when we get to that point a bit more about that. And for the wayfarer, who's like a traveler who's been cut off from all means, a duty imposed by Allah, and Allah is the all-knower, the all-wise. The first one, the fuqara, the poor. Brothers, between the definitions of the fuqara and the masakin, which are the plural of faqir and miskin, the poor and the needy, the ulama, they differed regarding the definitions. Some of them, some of the scholars, they actually said the faqir and the miskin are both the same thing. They're both the same. And some of them, they said the faqir is the one that is more in need than the miskin. And some of them, they said the opposite of that, saying the miskin is in more need than the faqir. So here regarding the fuqara, the Shaykh says, Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, they are those who have not enough, they don't have enough for their needs except a little, less than half. They have less than half. So if a person does not find sufficient to keep himself and his family for half a year, then he's to be considered as a faqir. And he should be given sufficient to keep him and his family for a whole year. That's how much he should be given. He should be given sufficient to keep him and his family going for a whole year. Now regarding some of these definitions, brothers, as I said, there is a lot to talk about, a lot to go off and sidetrack and 1, 2, 3. But as I said, this isn't the point of this course, because we're trying to make it as pretty much simple as possible, so that inshallah we can at least get a good understanding generally of the concept of zakat. Then you will have the keys inshallah. You yourself can go speak with the mashayikh, discuss, study more, research more, listen more and things like this, and benefit like that. So that's the faqir. As for the miskin, which is generally translated as the needy, they are those who have enough for half a year or more, but they do not find enough for a whole year. See, the faqir was the one that had less than half a year. And he should be given enough for what? To keep him going and his family for a year. The miskin, the Shaykh says, is the one who has enough for half a year or more, but they do not have enough for the whole year. So they should be given enough for the whole year. And if a man does not have enough money, but he has other sources of income, pay attention to this. But he has other sources of income, such as a business, a salary, or other independent means by which he achieves sufficiency. Yani this man, he can go and work. He's got these assets or these businesses or whatever it is. And he can get enough where he will be sufficient, then he should not be given zakat. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is no share in it for the rich man, or for the one who is strong and able to earn his living. And in our brothers, can you imagine? There's a brother, he's completely healthy, he's completely fine, maybe he even has a business and he can be sufficed. So he goes and he closes the business, sits at home, nothing's wrong with him, he's able to work, and he says, I need the zakat. Why do you need the zakat? Just go and work. You're able to work. Allah blessed you with a healthy body, the ability, a business, whatever it is, Allah blessed you. For here the Prophet ﷺ said, there is no share in it for the rich man, nor for the one who is strong and able to earn his living. Number 3 is those who work on it or in it. Those who work to collect the funds, they are those who the ruler of the country entrusts with the collection of zakat. Because generally speaking, who sent out Mu'adh radiallahu anhu to get the zakat? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So generally we see that it is the rulers and those who take their positions who usually designate individuals to work in these fields. So that's why the Shaykh said they are those who the ruler of the country entrusts with the collection of zakat from those who must pay it, and with its distribution amongst those who are entitled to receive it, and with its safekeeping and other responsibilities. So obviously the one that collects the zakat and deals with it, brothers, he's got to take into consideration a few things. It's not just, wallah, go knock on the door, take the zakat, jazakallahu khair, Allah ma'ak, and that's it, we're done. He's still got a job to do. He's got to ensure he's getting it and getting it in a just way. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Mu'adh regarding that, don't take the best of their property. And then he said, fee, in this context, fee the dua of the oppressed. Subhanallah. Fee the dua of the oppressed. For one could possibly be working in this field and he could possibly oppress others. Let us just say this, for example, wallah, 100 sheep. There is 10 which are the top-notch, top of the chain, luxury, and there are 10 which are, for example, throw them away right now, we don't even need them, right? Here, what are you going to do? Don't take the best, and don't take the worst. And this was pretty much the advice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says here, the Shaykh, they are given their salary from the zakat money in accordance with their work. And then he says what? Even if they're wealthy. Even if they're what? Even if they're wealthy. And that's why when we said earlier, the hadith, brothers, that zakat is not to be given to a rich man. So is there an exception to that rule? Yes. That's why we said we're taking the foundations here. We're taking the keys here. But there is more to the story, yani. So I'm trying to give what we can and what we have time for. But really there's a lot of side points, yani. The 4th one is those whose hearts are inclined towards Islam. He says they are those amongst the leaders of men who are weak in faith. And they should be given from the zakat something in order to strengthen their faith, so that they become callers to Islam and a fine example. You need the benefit here, brothers. Imagine now, let's just say the leader of a tribe, let's say even they're Muslim, but they may be weak Muslims. So you know that if you give them a little bit from the zakat, they're going to end up becoming, wallah, better, more righteous, more pious, something like this. It could be through that, Allah Azza wa Jal guides the whole tribe to be soldiers, more pious, more righteous, more worshipping, and things like this. The Shaykh says, so, if a person is weak in Islam, but he is not one of the leaders who commands obedience, he's just an ordinary member of the public, should he be given anything from the zakat in order to strengthen his faith? The Shaykh said, some of the scholars say that he should be given something, because benefiting the religion is more important than benefiting a man's body. And this is the case if a poor person is given something to nourish his body, then nourishing his heart with faith is of greater benefit. Other scholars consider that he should not be given anything, because the benefit in strengthening his faith is an individual benefit which only affects him. But the point is anyway, there is a bit of words about that. He says, Ar-Riqab, freeing the slaves. That includes purchasing the freedom of slaves with the zakat funds, emancipating slaves, helping those who have made a contract with their owners. Imagine now a slave has made a contract with their owner that you give me this much and I'll set you free. So are we allowed to support them in the zakat? The answer is yes. What about freeing Muslim captives? The Sheikh literally says, and freeing Muslim captives. You're allowed to take from the zakat money to free Muslim captives. Also al-gharimun. Who are al-gharimun? They are those who are in debt. Those who are in debt. Who have not. They don't have the ability, to discharge their debts. They can't finish their debts. They can't pay them off, whether large or small. Even if they have sufficient food. Even if they have sufficient food. Because now they got a debt. The debt doesn't really have much to do with the food. It's two separate things here. He says thus, if it's determined that a man has sufficient food for him and his family, but he's in debt which he can't pay, then he should be given sufficient amount from the zakat fund. And it's not permissible for a person who lends money to a poor person to consider that sum as a part of his zakat. Oh, now we got a big matter. Now we got a big matter. That is, brothers, you came to a brother and you told him, please brother, give me 10,000 as a loan. I'll give you back literally on the 31st of December. December's a 31-day month, yeah? Khalas, that's it. The 31st of December. You say, all right, how much are you going to pay back monthly? Are we going to do a deal? 1, 2, 3? Because Islamically, brothers, just for a side benefit here, that these things should be stipulated. Don't just go, wallah, and make a deal with the brother. Oh, how much is this car that you'll give me for? Oh, you know what? Just take it and pay me back whatever you want. Don't do that. Why? Maybe the brother has in mind, I'll pay you back 5 years later. I'll give you back $50 a month. Maybe. Are you going to be happy with that? Generally, no. So don't, leave it ambiguous. Set a time, set a date, set an amount, set if it's installments, set where. If you can do all of these things and how and things like this, wallah, it's very important. Al-gharimun, they are those in debt, he said, who don't have the ability to discharge their debts, whether they're large or small, even if they have sufficient food. Thus, if it is determined that a man has sufficient food for himself and his family, but he is in debt which he cannot pay, then he should be given sufficient from the zakat fund, and it is not permissible for a person who lends money to a poor person to consider that sum as a part of his zakat. Now the brother asked for 10 grand, didn't he? They agreed monthly installments, payments, and it's going to be done by the 31st of December. So now, this brother that has the 10 grand loaned it to him, but he's got his zakat next month, for example. Can he go and say, okay, I owe 50 grand zakat, but I loaned this money from this brother to this brother. So I'm going to take that 10 grand off what I owe. He can't do that. He cannot do that. He's not allowed to do that. So inshallah that's clear. And it's permissible for the one who pays zakat to go to the creditor and give him his right without the debtor's knowledge. This is another point now. If the one paying the zakat knows that he is unable to pay it. Once again, it is permissible for the one who pays zakat to go to the creditor and give him his right without the debtor's knowledge. And if the one paying the zakat knows that he's unable to pay it. And then moving on, because there's going to be a point about that coming at the end as well, inshallah. We're running a little bit short on time, but inshallah khair. He says number 7 is in Allah's cause. And that is generally understood to be jihad in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal. And rather there is a consensus that falls under it, and it is that. But the matter, my brothers, is what, as the Shaykh says firstly, let's see. He says that is jihad in Allah's cause. The mujahid may be given zakat, which is sufficient for his jihad. and the equipment for jihad in Allah's way may be purchased from the zakat fund. From the zakat fund. Included in the description now, because brothers, we know that that falls under it, correct? That 100% falls under it to everyone. That's strong. Anyway, he says here, included in the description of in the way of Allah is the acquisition of knowledge of Islamic law. The Shaykh is on the opinion that the student of Islam, meaning the student of knowledge, if he goes out for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal to study, he may be given from the zakat funds enough to enable him to pursue his studies through books and so on. He says, the Shaykh, but unless he possesses money with which he can purchase these things. So firstly, we got who? The Mujahid. Everyone agreed on that, correct? Then we got after that, okay, but isn't the student of knowledge, does he fall under this concept of the Mujahid or not? Many of the ulama actually were on the opinion that he does. But the Shaykh says here, unless he possesses money with which he can purchase these things. But just for our knowledge, the ulama, they differed over that heavily. Meaning they actually differed over, what about if this individual has money? Is he still entitled? Didn't we say with the ones that work with the zakat, collect and distribute, they're entitled even if they're rich? Even if they're rich? But what about the mujahid in this case? Even if he's rich or has money, is he entitled to zakat funds for his pursuit of knowledge? Some of the ulama, they said yes, even if he has money. And some of them, they mentioned one of the reasons for that is because him going out in pursuit for that Islamic knowledge as a student, that he now is busy with that and he's not able himself to earn. He's not able himself to earn. So that was their reasoning. That was their reasoning. And it is really a big topic and there is a big difference of opinion regarding these things. But wallahu a'lam, it is inshallah okay for a student of knowledge to take, especially a student of knowledge who you hope can benefit the communities. Who you hope can benefit the communities. This is like even more so he's allowed to, inshallah. What about also using zakat to build mosques or schools or hospitals? Using the zakat to build mosques or schools or hospitals. The ones that allowed this, where did they put it? Underneath the way for the sake of Allah. Because fi sabilillah means what? In the way of Allah. So some of the ulama, they opened up the umbrella extremely wide and they included in that all of these things. Hospitals, mosques, renovations, schools, all of these things. Whereas the vast majority, they did not include them. The vast majority, especially of the Salaf, understood it to mean in the way of Allah as in the Mujahid. Just to be clear. And I'm only mentioning the other opinion that some allowed it for mosques and schools and things like this. Some allowed it. I'm only mentioning that for our knowledge. Just so at least we can understand that point, insha'Allah ta'ala. There was a question which I saw from one of the sisters, which we'll just quickly put into that. Can we give zakat to the burial, the destitute burial? So pretty much imagine now, I hope I understood the question correctly, inshallah. What about now if we need to bury someone, right? Can zakat go towards that, for example? We said the asl is, brothers, what? The asl is that deceased individual, is he not leaving off wealth? He is leaving off wealth. For the wealth should come from his wealth that he left off if no one else wants to volunteer. And they're not obliged to volunteer from the get-go. So he left off wealth. If no one else is going to cover, then the wealth which he left off we use for his burial. Then if he has no wealth, if one of his family members can, that'll be good. And then if that can't happen, some of the ulama, they said, it can go to like the national treasury. The national treasury of the Muslims, Baytul Mal. And if that can't, then it can go from the more general funding of the Muslims, but it should not be taken from the zakat. It should not be taken from the zakat. Why? how would it fall under one of these 8 categories? Apart from possibly, which one? In the way of Allah, exactly. The one we just spoke about, possibly. But generally speaking, we said the ulama did not understand the verse to mean that general umbrella which we spoke about. So insha'Allah ta'ala, that one is clear. When building a well overseas as an act of sadaqah jariyah, and we leave names of loved ones on the plaque, so people make dua for us, is this allowed? That doesn't have anything to do with zakat, I think, But anyway, the point is, insha'Allah ta'ala, that is allowed, and the ulama did not say that is haram, insha'Allah. But at the same time, some of the ulama described it as makruh, disliked. But many of the ulama classified it as mubah, permissible. But at the same time, we did mention the verse, how some of the ulama, they said, لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. We don't want any thanks from you, any recompense from you, nor any thanks. But at the same time, is it allowed? Yes, it is allowed, insha'Allah ta'ala, so long as one does not intend through that showing off and things like this, of course, Of course, insha'Allah, that's clear. Okay, the next one and the last one of the 8 beneficiaries, brothers. Does anyone want to ask though, regarding just the 8th category? Because that fi sabilillah ones, usually brothers have questions about that. Does anybody want to ask just about that 8th category? The what, sorry? I didn't hear you. Yes. But like we said, him and his family, Him and his family. But don't forget too, that generally speaking, if they're going to fall under one of the categories, which is a good point actually that you're asking now, can you give zakat to any of these 8 categories, or do you have to specify them in order or limit yourself to one? Or can you give zakat, part of it to this category, part of it to that category, correct? The answer is, well, I probably asked about 3 separate matters in that. So anyway, the answer is you're allowed to give zakat to one category and not to another. And you're allowed to give zakat in any of the 8 categories that you like. It doesn't have to be meaning the first, and then if you don't find the first, the second, if you don't find the second, the third. And likewise, you can give part of your zakat to some and part of your zakat to others. To one category and then to other category. What do you mean? Sorry? Of course, no, we should, 100%. Which is a side point about like what you're asking pretty much, regarding organizations and things like this, brothers. Always check who you're giving your zakat to. Always check who you're giving your zakat to. Let us try to just get to the end of this, because there's going to be an important point, which is, what if I gave zakat to a beggar who looked poor and it turned out he was rich? Isn't that an important mas'ala? It's a very important matter, I think, in our day and age, especially overseas. Anyway, let's just move on to the 8th one. The wayfarer is the one, as we said, which is the traveler whose journey is interrupted due to the lack of funds. Whose journey is interrupted due to the lack of funds. Let us just say hypothetically, even though it is a bit difficult, I think, in our day and age to picture, unless someone goes off to like those desolate lands, people where there's no connection, 1, 2, 3. So let us say, for example, there was a traveler, he's overseas in Saudi maybe, okay? Let's say he loses everything. He loses his contacts, he loses his phone, he loses his money, he loses his tickets, he missed his flight. He literally has nothing now, right? He's absolutely gone, zero. He has no contact and no way of receiving any financial assistance from his family or whatever it is. In his hometown in Australia, for example, the brother's rich. The brother is rich, for example. But he got stuck overseas in a predicament that it would have been like, no way we're ever going to be in the position we're in now. For example, and there's no way at all to get any form of assistance, even though he's rich back home. He's lost all access to his funds. This is counted as the 8th category, the wayfarer, where one is allowed to get supported through the zakat in this. Is that clear, brothers? That point clear? Does anybody want to ask any questions regarding the beneficiaries? The beneficiaries. Say that again, sorry? The one that is most in need. The one that the believer sees is most beneficial for the people, The one that the believer sees is most beneficial to the people. Some of the ulama, they spoke about putting the poor and needy first and things like this. But really the one that the believer sees is most in need is the one that should be given precedence and priority.
So after you give one, or is it a limit to how much money?
As we said, Ibn Uthaymeen's words, rahimahullah, for example, with the poor and needy, that you give them according to the year. You give them according to the year. And there are differing views on this too. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, moving on now, some of the questions related to zakat. Firstly, the zakat on the gold worn by women and silver worn by women. Any brothers, you have obviously gold and silver, right? Meaning you have gold and silver. Like let's say, imagine you have gold and silver. Obviously, when it comes to gold, the men can't wear gold. So if it comes to the man and he's just holding it there and it's for a legitimate reason, he's not wearing it, he's doing it for investment or something, the ruling's obviously clear, correct? Because he's got gold, he's not wearing it, no one's wearing it. Let's say he's single, okay? He's got it there for investment. Of course, he has to pay on this. Obviously, when all of the conditions are met and everything like that, which we've spoken about. But what about a lady who wears gold? A lady who's actually wearing these zakatable items, if you'd like to say. Is there zakat on this? Some of the ulama, they said there is, and some of the ulama, they said there isn't. And there is proof from those who said that there is, and there is proof from those who said that there isn't. From the main proofs of those that said that there isn't, is they pretty much resembled it to what? To the clothing you wear and things like this, yani. But at the same time, what I advise always, brothers, is if it's possible, give the zakat on them. Give the zakat on them. And we see some ahadith, which is some of the proofs which those who said that she has to give zakat on them, that she has to give zakat on them, they used, where the Prophet ﷺ saw some wearing gold and the likes, and he asked, like even Aisha radiallahu anha, did you pay zakat on them? Did you pay zakat on them? For I always advise brothers, if it is possible, to pay zakat on that gold and silver. And the asl is, you know how we said there are certain categories of what zakat is owed on? So for example, trade goods, right? For example, livestock. Some of the ulama, they said the asl is that you give the zakat from the actual category that you're dealing with. So if I'm dealing with, wallah, 40 sheep or 100 sheep or 1,000 sheep, and I need to give sheep now in zakat, I need to give a certain amount here. Okay, what I should do, some of the ulama, they said the foundational rule is to give it and extract the zakat from the actual category. So if I owe zakat for gold and silver, to not go, or the asl, to not go and give a sheep for zakat, for example. But can you now intermingle or change over and the likes? This is a point of dispute amongst the ulama. And that's why they said, the asl is to give it from the actual thing. Yes. Very good. As for diamonds and things like this, you don't pay on them. You do not pay on diamonds, you do not pay on rubies and stuff like that. Someone might say, but what do you mean? Rubies or diamonds are more expensive than gold. For example, someone might say that. But this is the hikmah of the sharia on the sharia. Khalas. We were told what to give the zakat on. We limit to that and that's it. That's it. But unless what? Unless you're trading with the items, of course, then they become trade goods. Very good. Is it the husband's or the brother's or the father's, for example, responsibility to pay for his wife, to pay for his daughter, to pay for his sister? The answer is no. But if his child is underage and he is saving that money for them, it's their money now, he's the guardian here. Obviously, they're not accountable. They're not accountable. But let us take a step back now. You got a husband and a wife. Let's just say on her wedding night, she got gifted, $10,000 worth of gold, for example. And that's her gold now. Let us say she doesn't wear it. She has it as an investment. Does she pay or not pay? She has to pay now. It's an investment, right? But let us say now it's wearable. Does she pay or not? We said there's the difference, correct? But we said to stay safe, I personally advise to always pay if it's possible It's not going to cause hardship, inshallah. I advise to pay always, yani. But as for the actual ruling, you can go to one of the seniors regarding that, yani. I don't like these things at all on my neck. But I always advise, if it's possible, you're safe like that. You can't be wrong like that. But now, let's just say we're going to go with she's paying. Is it the husband's responsibility? The answer is no. It's not the husband's responsibility to pay for his wife's zakat. Likewise, it's not the husband's responsibility, the father's responsibility to pay, for example, for his 30-year-old daughter that's living with her husband out of the house. Or for his sister, for example, who's grown and old as well. But now, can he? The answer is yes. He can pay. But once again, there should be the intention also. And he should let her know, which is better if he lets her know and the likes and things like this. There was one more thing, I think. I'm coming to that, the super. Yes, coming to that as well, inshallah. I thought there was something that with this one now, anyway. Yeah. You can take it to the... Yeah, they'll tell you exactly. The jurors will tell you exactly. The jurors will tell you exactly. And on top of that, when you purchase the gold, if it's legitimate, they should give you the paperwork. I'm not the most experienced with gold and these kind of things, yani. But I know at least that the jurors usually would give you some sort of paperwork to identify the exact components of the actual entity, yani. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, zakat on savings. This gets asked so much. I want to go to Hajj. I'm saving for Hajj. Do I have to pay zakat? The answer is yes, you have to pay zakat. You have to pay zakat on the savings. With regards, Sheikh Ibn Baz said, rahimahullah, with regards to money that is being saved for marriage, he said, or to build a home, and so on, because someone might say, wallah, look, I'm saving to buy a house, or to buy a land, or I'm saving for Hajj or Umrah, or I've bought already a land ages ago, I pay in zakat on that land because it's investment, they say, for example, yani, but I'm saving to build a house on that land. So do I have to pay on the savings? The answer is yes, of course. If the time has come and it's met the conditions, you have to pay for those savings. So he says, with regard to money that is being saved for marriage or to build a home and so on, it is subject to zakat if it reaches the nisab, the threshold. And we said you need to see the threshold. It can differ, yani, and differs from year to year and the likes, yani. If it reaches the nisab and 1 year has passed since it reached the nisab, whether it is in the form of gold, silver, paper currency, because of the general meaning of the evidence which indicates that zakat is due on whatever reaches the nisab after 1 year has passed, without exception. We said zakat in other forms, or buying other things for those things to be given. Meaning now, I'll give you the fatwa by Ibn Baz first, rahimahullah. He says, it is also permissible to give instead of cash goods, such as fabric, food and so on, if it seems that this will serve the interest of those who are entitled to zakat based on the equivalent value. Such as if the poor person is insane or lacking in reason or foolish or immature. Brothers, you got someone you know that if you, for example, give them something like cash or something like that, they're going to go and absolutely squander the wealth. They don't know what to do with it. They're immature, they're foolish, they're insane, whatever it is here. He says, and there is the fear that he would squander the money. And you know it's better for him to give him the food or clothing of equivalent value rather than zakat in the form of cash. All of this is mentioned in the more correct scholarly opinion. And he was asked, what about buying food and other items such as blankets and clothes and giving them to the poor? Especially in cases where there is not enough food available at affordable prices in that country. He said there is no reason why that should not be done after ascertaining that they will be given to the Muslims. But the asl is, brothers, the asl is that if you know that they're not anything like we just mentioned, they're fine, you should not give them it like that. You don't just go and buy them what you want or what you think they want or need and give it to them. You understand that? That's an important point, yani. Imagine, brothers, because really that zakat is their money, correct? That zakat is theirs when we're talking about paper currency, for example, yani now. Imagine now I asked you for $5,000 Australian. I told you, look, I'm going to pay it back inshallah next month. So I go, next month, what do? I come to you with a PlayStation, an Xbox, a Nintendo Switch, and a few games. And I give you that. Are you going to accept that? Yani, no. This is a debt that I have to give you back. I have to give you back. But it should be given in a way that you gave it to me and in a way that you can do what you want. Not what I think you want. Maybe you want this, but this will be good for you. But if there's a legitimate reason, and you know that there's a legitimate Islamically justifiable reason, some of the ulama did give the fatwa that it is allowed. Zakat on previous years. Zakat on previous years, missed years. Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, or he was asked, a man was careless about paying zakat for 5 years. I think you asked the question, but about the excuse, yeah? But you said that he died on that. But let us say now, a man was careless about paying zakat for 5 years, and now he's repenting. Does repentance free him of the obligation to pay zakat? He says. He was asked, now, okay, I owe 5 years. Look, I wasn't the best Muslim. I become, inshallah, a repenting Muslim. I'm trying to be a good Muslim, so I repent now. Does that mean now that those 5 years we just forget about him because I repented? He says, if that does not free him of the obligation, what's the solution? This wealth is more than 10,000 and he does not know how much it is now. So he replied, zakat is an act of worship towards Allah Azza wa Jal, and it is the right of the poor. If a person withholds it, then he's violating 2 rights. The right of Allah and the right of the poor and others who are entitled to zakat. If he repents after 5 years, as is stated in the question, then he is absolved of the obligation to fulfill the right of Allah. So that's covered now, the right of Allah Azza wa Jal. But he has not fulfilled the right of those who are eligible, who he owed pretty much. He says, Allah Azza wa Jal says, and it is he who accepts the repentance of his slaves and forgives sins. But the second right still remains, which is the right of those who are entitled to zakat, the poor and others. So he has to hand over the zakat to these people, and perhaps he will attain the reward for zakat if his repentance is sound, for the bounty of Allah is immense. With regard now to working out the amount of zakat, the Sheikh says, he should estimate. And this is what you should do, brothers. If you ever come across or came across a time where you're not sure, man, I know I owed money when I was 16, for example. I know I owed money when I was 16. But how much money did I owe? I don't remember. I don't know. You should try your utmost best to estimate. And even if you give more, that is better. Some of the scholars, they actually said it's better to limit to that 2.5%. That's an opinion. But the correct opinion, if you want to give more, that's better. And that, inshallah, as we're going to see, will actually cover any gaps, any faults in the zakat. You know how on the day of resurrection, brothers, regarding the prayer, right? The prayer. For those who had faults in the obligatory prayers, inshallah, those sunan, they will fill up some of the shortcomings. And hopefully, inshallah, as the ulama, some said, the zakat, the sadaqah, and any extra zakat will fill up the shortcomings in some of that zakat. Fahiyah, he said, with regard to working out the amount of zakat, he should estimate the amount of zakat as best as he can. And Allah does not burden any soul beyond its scope. So if it is 10,000, for example, how much is the zakat for 1 year? 250. If the amount of zakat is 250, then he should pay 250 for each of the past years. In brackets, I'm saying that he missed. Unless in some of those years he had more than 10,000, in which case he should pay zakat, or he should pay extra. If it was less in some years, then he should pay zakat. Yani brothers, now, imagine it was about 10 grand, right? For the last 5 years, every year, you owed about 10 grand after your estimation, approximately. So now, what's 10 grand? What's the zakat payable on that 2.5%? $250, correct? So now, how many years went by? 5 years. Which means we should pay 1,250 because we estimated that every year we owed approximately 250. But if we thought one of those 5 years, I was doing it very good, right? And I had 20 grand in one of those years, not 10. So I estimate that year at how much? 500. And likewise, one of those years, I didn't do it the best. I had 5,000. Let's just say it was above the threshold, for example. Let's just say that. So that is what? 125, correct? So this is how you got to estimate to the best of your ability. And likewise, like I said, for the older brothers now, who owe that money of their zakat, they can only estimate according to the best of their ability, according to that which they feel is sufficient, inshallah. And if they can and want to give more, that would be good, inshallah ta'ala, so that it can cover any of the shortcomings. What about zakat on those in debt, involved in haram? Imagine, brothers, now you know a brother that went and bought a house on haram money, with haram money. Sorry, opposite. Let's say he went, that's another mas'ala firstly. He went and bought a house, riba loan. So now isn't he is in debt, right? But the loan was haram anyway. The ulama, some of them, they said, look what Ibn Uthaymeen was asked. If a person gets into a debt for a haram purpose, can we give him zakat? Can we give him zakat? Answer, he says, if he has repented, we may give him zakat. Otherwise, we may not, because in that case, that's helping in something haram. Imagine a brother goes buys a house now, and then what? He's fine. He's happy about it. He's happy about it. So we go and we support him in the zakat. We're helping him in haram. But let us say someone did it. He came to his senses. He repented, and all of these things. Then, insha'Allah ta'ala, in this case, it is halal. Insha'Allah ta'ala. Do you have to tell the recipient that it's zakat? This is actually a common question that gets asked. If I want to go now and give someone zakat money, do I have to tell them that it's zakat? The answer is no, you do not. It comes in Zadul Mustaqni' that if he gives it to someone who thinks is not entitled. Sorry, that's another one. If you came, this is different fatwa. If you gave your zakat to someone whom you know is entitled to it with the intention of giving zakat, then your zakat is valid. And we hope that Allah will accept it from you. You do not have to tell the recipient that it is zakat. Is that clear? That's clear, inshallah. You don't have to tell them that it's zakat. 9, this is the mas'ala now. Giving zakat to someone, then realizing they're rich. Giving zakat to someone, then realizing, you know how there's the beggars overseas, right? Let us just say hypothetically, that now you gave one of those beggars, and you know these guys in reality they're loaded. For example, you didn't know that, but you only realized that after. Have you fulfilled your duty? Some of the ulama, they said no. Some of the ulama, they said no. Because zakat has to be given to who? One of the 8 categories. Poor is included, exactly. So now, is this person poor? You come to find out he's not poor. So that is why some of the ulama said no. And other ulama, they said yes. If you legitimately tried to see, and you believe that they were, and you gave that, then insha'Allah ta'ala it is accepted. It comes in the Zad. If he gives it to someone who he thinks is not entitled to it, then it turns out that he is entitled to it. It is not regarded as zakat except in the case of his giving it to a well-off person thinking that he's poor. In this case, it is acceptable. In this case, it is acceptable. So for example, brothers, now, I most likely think that this person is not entitled to zakat, but I still give him zakat. No, you can't here. It doesn't count, yani. But if you sincerely believe that yes, he is entitled, then in this case, it is inshallah, even if it comes and turns out that he's not. Another mas'ala is, do we follow the gold or silver? This is going to be quick, inshallah, brothers. Do we follow the gold or silver? Many of the ulama, especially contemporaries, they said to follow the silver. Why? Because the silver in our day and age, brothers, is much less. Much less. So they said, one, it will push you to give more. It will push you to give more. And that way, even if it was meant to be gone off the gold, that will patch up any shortcomings and things like this, yani. And likewise, it's better for the poor and needy. Imagine, brothers, how many or how less people would give zakat if we were all to go off the gold. Yani the zakat, brothers, on silver is less than $1,000. Is less than $1,000. So the zakat on the gold is more than, for example, 4 or 5, yani, at least, right? So imagine how less people would give zakat if we were all to go off the gold. So that is why some of the ulama, they chose, especially as I said, contemporaries, to go off the silver threshold, which is the 595 grams, as we said. Another mas'ala, giving zakat before its time. Can you give zakat before its time? The answer is yes, you can. It is permissible to give zakat before its time, as it comes in the fatwa. It is permissible to pay zakat before its due date, because the Prophet ﷺ accepted 2 years of zakat in advance from Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib radiyallahu anhu. But we should remember here that the annual payment of zakat is worked out according to the Hijri calendar and not the Gregorian calendar. And they said the difference between them is well known. Just one point, brothers. If you want to give the zakat for a certain reason, if there is a legitimate reason that you have to or you think you should, you're allowed to, correct? But be careful that you calculate accordingly. Meaning, if my zakat is in 5 months, 5 months, and I say I want to give my zakat now. So what am I doing really? I'm estimating what I'm going to have up to that 5 months, correct? So imagine now in 2 months, Allah bless me with a job that I'm making way more money. When that time comes now, I have to re-estimate and make sure that I don't owe more. If you owe less, alhamdulillah, it'll patch up and it's rewarding. But if you owe more, then you still owe zakat you didn't pay. Is that clear? You still owe zakat you didn't pay. Okay, this is like the 5th hour, I think, teaching straight. So, getting a bit of chest constriction. So, inshallah, we'll probably close it off in a few more questions. The brother asked about superannuation. What was one of the conditions we said earlier? 100%. That you have, yeah? That's right, when you have full ownership. Full ownership, one of the meanings here as well is that you're able to tatasarraf bil mal. You're able to deal with it, take it, do what you want with it, etc. As for the superannuation, to my knowledge, wallahu a'lam, I'm under the impression that it's 65 years old and then you're entitled to get that. Whatever the case is, the point is, if you're not able to get your money, then right now you don't have to pay zakat on it. Right now you do not include that in the zakat. If you know, for example, now, the zakat, your zakat is due. And let us say you have $30,000, $40,000 in super, but they don't let you touch it till you're 65. It's like it's completely locked. You don't have full ownership here. So in this case, you're not obliged to pay zakat on it now. But what about when the time comes when you get it? Inshallah, that can be some of homework for you guys, inshallah ta'ala. Can we claim the amount paid in zakat in tax return? Many of the ulama, they said it is allowed, and there is some words about that. Wallahu a'lam if you'd like, get in touch inshallah regarding that, and I can revise some of the fatawa of the ulama regarding that. What brothers? Yep.
With dried foods, is it cost price of the dried foods and on top of the world?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a question that they asked before. If for example, you got 5 grand on this day, and 4 months later you go under the 5 grand.
Yeah.
Control, and then after that you go back up. When do you restart the 1 year or?
Say that again. Sorry.
So let's say the 1 year started.
Oh yes. It went under. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that. Subhanallah. So for example, now let us say we're on the 14th of Sha'ban, for example. Let us just go off the Gregorian calendar, just for the brothers, inshallah, for those who aren't familiar with the dates and the likes. Obviously, we stick to the lunar calendar, that's known, right? But just to make the point across, inshallah. The 24th of February now. Okay, let us say we have $0. Just example. We literally have nothing. Tomorrow, we're blessed with a job that we get 10 grand from. Tomorrow. Isn't that above the threshold now? According to gold and silver, it is both of them. So now we start the date. So let us say, so when's the date we said? The 25th of February now, because tomorrow we got the job. The 25th of February next year, even though we're going to go off the lunar, so it's going to be earlier than that. But the point is anyway, the 25th of February next year, let us say that's when it's meant to be the due date, right? Because our lunar year started. So now what happens is, let us say in 2 months, something happened, I had to buy something, whatever it is, that you ended up getting to $200. You ended up going down. The whole threshold or the whole, date now, the hawl, gone. That's it. So now you're gone, that's it. You don't go now 25th of February, because why? It went under. But what about now? When do you restart the date? When you go past the threshold again. When you go past the threshold again, you restart the date. Is that clear? That's an important matter as well, inshallah. Just one more point I wanted to mention. I know there's a few questions. Inshallah, I don't think we're going to get through them all, brothers, because I got to cut it, inshallah, very shortly. But I just wanted to mention one other point, and that was, slipped my mind now, subhanallah. One of the brothers was asking earlier. Salsabil, anyway, sorry, tfaddal. That's it. That was the one, so alhamdulillah, you asked. Okay, now, let us say, for example, someone is giving, but when you say sadaqah, then be careful of that. So is it sadaqah or is it zakat they're giving all year round? Okay. Khalas. No, they don't have to. No. They don't have to. It's all meeting the same need. Yeah, it's all meeting the same need. But another mas'ala which is linked to that is if now, brothers, we're giving zakat throughout the year. Right? We're giving zakat throughout the year. Are you allowed to do this? Yes, you are allowed to do this. You are. But once again, you need to ensure that you're calculating correctly so you don't end up owing more. Is that clear? So you don't end up owing more. That's very important. Now, there are really two ways to do it. We're not going to get into the fine details, but pretty much either, because remember we're focusing on the cash goods and things like this now. We're not focusing on like this livestock and crops and grains and all these things. So now, imagine, because we can either split it into, for example, every payment individually, once it's reached the threshold and the likes, but then we'd have to give it separate calendar dates, brothers. And once again, many of the ulama, they said this is difficult. It's very difficult to keep track. Imagine you're a business owner, and for example, you're dealing with the cash. Every, for example, 5 days, you're getting a big payment. So let us say you want to give each one a separate date. You want to do it individually. Some of the ulama said you can do this. But the problem is with this, brothers, why is it difficult? Because imagine this happens 15 times over. It's like you're going to literally have 15 different dates for next year. And you got to make sure that you're observing each one, how up it goes, how down it goes, if it goes under the threshold, over the... It's difficult like that. So some of the ulama, they would advise what? Just put it all together and do it at the end. So for example now, if we're on the 14th of Sha'ban, 2000 obviously the Hijri. Let's stick to Gregorian inshallah so we don't mix and match here. We're on 2024. What's the date? The 24th, right? 24th. Okay. Let's say my nisab started today. So my pretty much khalas. My date starts today in the hawl, right? So now my hawl starts today, the 1 year. Khalas. Everything which I earn up to pretty much the 24th, 2025, sorry. Once again, I just want to repeat so no one misunderstands. We don't go off Gregorian, but just so we can make it clear, inshallah, for the dates and the likes. 2025 comes, for example. Then what? Say I earn over, my threshold started today, which means my year started today. Next week I earn $1,000. The week after I save $1,000. The week after I spend $1,000. 2 months later I earn $5,000. 4 months later I lose $6,000, but I'm still always above the threshold. Khalas, when it comes to that date on the 24th, 2025, you see what you have. And you calculate based on that the 2.5%. Yani zakat is actually not difficult, brothers. Yes, some brothers might have certain cases, which is some of the masail I actually put here, which is got to do with shares, crypto, these kind of things. There are some delicate masail like this which can be discussed, but generally speaking, for most, zakat is actually fairly simple and it's fairly easy. But that is just a very simple way, if you'd like to say. I just wanted to point about the date as well, brothers. The date begins when you reach your threshold. When you reach the threshold, the date begins, correct? That's why Ramadan is not the date it begins, Some people, they extract their wealth in Ramadan only, their zakat. That's not the case. Your zakat might have been in Muharram, brother. Your zakat might have been in Rabi' al-Awwal. Your zakat might have been in, or might be in Shawwal, for example. Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala was asked, is zakat better in Ramadan, even though it's one of the pillars of Islam? He said, zakat, like other good deeds, is better when done at a time of virtue. But when zakat becomes obligatory and the year has passed, it becomes obligatory for a person to pay it. And he should not delay it until Ramadan. Because how do you know you're going to make it? You're going to live there and that. It's like saying, if I owe a prayer, I slept through Fajr. Do I tell myself, for example, that I'm going to wait till Ramadan to make up that prayer? Yani, how do I know I'm going to even get there and that? And it's not allowed anyway. But I'm just saying. So he says here, for a person to pay it, and he should not delay it until Ramadan. If the year is completed in Rajab, which is 2 months before Ramadan, then he should not delay it in Ramadan. Rather, he should pay it in Rajab, which was last month in the Islamic calendar. If the year is completed in Muharram, he should pay it in Muharram and not delay it until Ramadan. But if the year is completed in Ramadan, then he should pay it in Ramadan. He should pay it in Ramadan. Ibn Qudama rahimahullah, he said, zakat must be paid immediately. And it is not permissible to delay paying it when one is able to pay it, if there is no fear of harm. This is the view of Shafi'i rahimahullah, which he says. And also when it came to the standing committee being asked about a man who possesses the threshold in Rajab, but he wants to delay it 2 months to pay it in zakat. He says, or they replied, it is obligatory for you to pay zakat in Rajab in the year following the year in which you took possession of the nisab. But if you want to pay it in Ramadan of the year in which you took possession of the nisab, paying it before the year has passed, that's permissible, because now you're paying it in advance. So you're allowed to pay it in advance, no problem. That's not the point here. The point is, he says in the Shaykh as well, if there is a valid need for it to be brought forward. If there's a reason to pay it in advance, you pay it in advance. But delaying it, he says, until the Ramadan that comes after the year has passed and it has become due in Rajab is not permissible, because it is obligatory to pay it as soon as it becomes due. Okay, last thing, brothers, I'm going to mention, inshallah. Subhanallah. Last thing I'm going to mention is the zakat on the wealth of a minor and insane person. You need the zakat, they're just doing some work outside, so mind that, inshallah. Don't mind that, yani. He says zakat, or we said zakat on the wealth of a minor and an insane person. Ibn Qudama rahimahullah ta'ala said, once it is established that zakat must be paid on the wealth of a minor or an insane person, then the guardian must pay it on their behalf from their wealth. The guardian must pay it. Imagine now there's a kid 3 years old, they inherit money. They inherit money. And the conditions are in place. He says why? Because it's an obligatory zakat which must be paid like the zakat of a sane adult. The guardian acts in his stead when paying what he is obliged to pay. This is a duty that is required of the minor or insane person. So the guardian must perform on their behalf, like spending on relatives. Likewise, the insane person, brothers. Imagine there's a brother, he was a hard worker. He saved up millions of dollars for years, and then something happened where he became insane. Let us say he didn't pay zakat on the money ever. That zakat is still due. So even though he's insane, someone has to, and the guardian should extract that from that wealth. And Nawawi, he says, in our view, zakat is required on the wealth of minors and the insane. And there is no difference of opinion on this point. The guardian must pay it from their wealth, just as he pays it from their wealth compensation for any damage they may cause to the property of others. That makes sense. They damage something. Do we say, wallah, he's insane, we're not going to deal with it? Imagine now, for example, a kid goes and keys a car. He goes and keys someone's car. Do you go and say, don't worry about it, he's insane, we're not going to do anything about it, khalas, leave it? No. He says, the guardian must pay it from their wealth, just as he pays from their wealth compensation for any damage they may cause property, or they may cause of property to the property of others, maintenance of relatives, and other duties that they may be obligated to fulfill. If the guardian does not pay the zakat, then the child or insane person must pay zakat for past years after attaining puberty or after recovering. Isn't that's important, brothers? Because if your parents had money for you that it was yours, or you had money that from 7, 8 years old, Then you hit puberty at 14, 15, obviously 16, khalas, you hit puberty 15 automatically. But you hit puberty then, or you remember at 20 that there were years that you didn't pay zakat for, you have to make up that zakat. He says if the guardian does not pay the zakat, then the child or insane person must pay zakat for past years after attaining puberty or after recovering, meaning the insane person. Because this is an obligation upon their wealth. But the guardian is sinning if he delays it, and what he has neglected cannot be waived. As quickly, brothers, just literally a minute or two. Zakatul Fitr. Zakatul Fitr is a type of sadaqah, of course, a type of zakat, a type of charity that is obligatory. It is obligatory. The Prophet ﷺ made Zakatul Fitr obligatory as a means of purifying. This is what Ibn Abbas said, radiyallahu anhuma, of purifying the fasting person from idle talk and foul language, and to feed the poor. Whoever pays it before the prayer, it's an accepted zakat, because you have to. You got to pay it before the prayer. And it's an accepted zakat. And whoever pays it after the prayer, it's just a kind of charity. And we know that the correct opinion, brothers, is wallahu a'lam, that zakatul fitr is compulsory, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, as Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, he said, he made the obligatory. He made the obligatory, and there is the consensus of the scholars that it is fard. This is what was mentioned in the Mughni. When should zakatul fitr be paid? It should be paid, or as they said, zakatul fitr becomes obligatory when the sun sets on the last day of Ramadan. Anyone who gets married, has a baby born to him, or becomes Muslim before the sun sets on that day has to give zakatul fitr on behalf of himself and also his dependents. But if that happens after sunset, he does not have to give it, they said. Whoever dies after sunset on the night of the fitr, zakatul fitr must be given on his behalf. This is what Imam Ahmad stated, rahimahullah. Also, when it comes to the minors, one should also give zakatul fitr on their behalf. And there's a bit to say about that, but I'm sure, inshallah, brothers, we're going to hear a lot about zakatul fitr. We'll take this last question, inshallah ta'ala. We're already over the time by almost half an hour. Yeah.
Sorry, Sheikh, do you know some and this says business has 30 grand and
Can you explain that a bit more?
so you say a business is high cash flow.
So do they have debts available?
Yeah, they have debts that they owe, but they don't pay them because
So they're not planning on paying them pretty much.
no, they're paying them, but
Okay, so here what they need to do is take into consideration the debts that they're expecting to pay very shortly, and they can detract that. They can deduce that. But they have to pay pretty much on what they have. So they pay on what they have, and then as for the debts that they're going to be paying shortly, how is that?
you say you have 15 grand debt, but you pay.
No, you don't then. You don't in that case. Yeah, very good that you explained that more. You don't in that case. So you leave it because you're paying off here such a small amount over time. Exactly. That's like saying what? That's like saying still, imagine I do a 5-year, 10-year contract. Or imagine those who actually have houses on payment plans. Let's say it's an Islamic payment plan, right? Aren't they in debt now? Maybe they're in debt $1 million. Do they say now that I'm never going to pay zakat because I'm paying $100 a month, for example, $200 a month? They're never going to pay zakat then. And they say I'm going to deduce or detract the debt from the... You don't do that. You don't do that. Okay. Wallahu a'la wa a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallim wa barik ala Muhammad. وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. جزاكم الله خيرا for your attendance, brothers. And as always, I strongly advise with the zakat questions, especially those which might be a bit controversial or something like this, always go back to the seniors, inshallah, who have a lot of experiences with these matters. Discuss them with the mashayikh and the du'at, and inshallah ta'ala, always make sure and ensure that you're asking the questions that need to be asked. Wallahi, brothers, zakat and falling short in zakat is not a short matter. It's not a small matter. If you don't ask the questions to someone, then believe me, you're going to end up falling into mistakes. Because it is easy to fall into mistakes, especially in our day and age where there's so much to take into consideration. Barakallahu feekum for your attendance. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.